have to explain that I've been on a walker because I've had a hip replacement, and some of you know exactly what I mean. But so far, in our annual Founders Day celebrations, we have looked at the early history and leaders of Henry County, and at the importance of tobacco to the growth of the county. Let me slip on my glasses here. We've also examined the contributions of African Americans to the success of the county. Today we look at the furniture industry and its impact on the county. But first we celebrate the formation of the county 243 years ago. In 1776, Patrick Henry, there's a picture of Patrick Henry up here. It's on the my left, your right. I know Virginia doesn't like it. But it is Patrick Henry, who was the first elected governor of Virginia, elected by the General Assembly, urged the General Assembly to create a new county from Pennsylvania County and a little to Bedford County. The General Assembly did so in October 1776. How many recognize 1776? Yeah. And named the new county Henry in honor of the governor. The county would have a number of justices comparable to today's Board of Supervisors, who would run the county, and a high sheriff who would function much like today's county administrator, but with additional responsibilities. For example, he was in charge of all elections. A date was set in the enabling legislation for the formation of the county in 1777. On the third Monday of January 1777, a group of people met at a home along the Smith River to organize the new county of Henry. First taking a required oath to Virginia, the 5 justices appointed for life were Edward Lynn, or Line, Abram Penn, Peter Saunders, George Waller, and Robert Harrison. Fortunately, we know something about 3 of those 5 people. We know that Abram Penn lived in what is now Patrick County. He was in charge of the militia of Henry County until Patrick County, until General Assembly formed Patrick County. George Waller he lived at Waller's Ford, and Waller's Ford became Phildale in 1917. And Robert Harrison, the father of George, and we'll mention George in a few minutes. After taking his oath of allegiance to Virginia, Robert Harrison produced a commission showing him as the first high sheriff and 2 of his sons as the undersheriffs. The justices appointed other officers of the court and 4 constable positions to maintain order in the county. Because the boundaries of a county often shifted when a new county was carved from it, the county's courthouse moved frequently. At the time, there was a rule that a county seat had to be in the center of a county and not more than a day's ride, by horse of course, from any part of the county. The first county seat of Henry County was reportedly about a mile northeast of where Stanley Furniture was eventually located. When Franklin County became a reality in 1787, the county seat was moved to Mayo Forge near the home of Abram Penn, one of the original justices, as I mentioned, of the county. In 1791, when Patrick County was created, the county seat moved to an area in the center of the remaining county's landmass, with George Harrison giving 50 acres of land for a new courthouse and buildings, and James Anthony providing 2 acres with springs so that there would be water for the courthouse. Some was simply called Henry County Courthouse. But before long, someone suggested naming the new village Martinsville in honor of perhaps the area's best known and well-known citizen at the time, who later became a general, Joseph Barton. By the way, George Harrison could afford to give the land because he eventually had 280,000 acres. And it was reported that you couldn't go from here to Danville without crossing the Harrison land. By the way, let me say a few things about the Harrison family. Altogether, there were later 46 plantations. 46. They stretched from Virginia through North Carolina and down into Mississippi. And it's an interesting story of how the one in Mississippi was formed, because the person who formed it broke away from his wife, and incidentally, they were all cousins, and went to Mississippi and never saw his wife again. And I'm sure some of you will want to do that, actually. On a personal note, Elaine Harrison was the chancellor of all the Ohio system when I was there. And Elaine told me that she was related to the Harrisons. And I of course, didn't know anything about the Harrisons at the time. And eventually Elaine became, Elaine's husband, George Harrison, was a prominent attorney in Columbus, Ohio. And they're retired now, but she was the chancellor of all the system in Ohio when I was there for 14 years. Owing its development not only to being the county seat, but eventually to the railroad and tobacco houses, Martinsville was incorporated as a town in 1873 and became a city in 1929. In 1779, having completed 3 one-year terms as governor, Patrick Henry moved to the area. He was a friend of Joseph Martin, but he also had an opportunity to buy 10,000 acres of land with his sister. 10,000 sounds like a lot, but when you consider that George Harrison had 280,000 acres, it's not a lot. Patrick Henry had relatives in the area, and Patrick Henry lived in a plantation at Leatherwood Creek for approximately 5 years until again being elected governor and moving to the Richmond area. The county has had at least 3 major economic development transformations during its history. First, of course, was tobacco, lasting from pre-colonial times to approximately 1906. During this period, the Danville and Western Railway saw its extension to Martinsville. As a result, the tobacco purveyors began to move into Martinsville. The tobacco industry came to an end when the smaller companies were bought up by the larger companies, meaning Reynolds, American Tobacco, and so forth, and consolidated into them. The second was furniture from approximately 1906, some would say from 1902, when John Bassett and others organized the Bassett Company, to about 1930. And the third was textiles from approximately 1930 to about 1979. During the latter transformation, Martinsville became known as the sweatshirt capital of the world. Frankly, we're searching for the 4th transformation. Since the closing of textiles in 1979, the area has struggled to find another initiative that would put people back to work and return the area to its former glory. Some people thought we had another transformation with the opening of the DuPont plant in 1941 to make nylon yarn for parachutes and later women's nylon hose. But the plant closed in 1969, although the EPA has written that some production continued until 1988, leaving many chemists and well-educated people to retire here, but they're dying out or leaving the area. Currently, we have Bassett Furniture and Hooker Furniture. Hooker was founded in 1924 and led by Clyde Hooker for more than 40 years. I know some of you knew Clyde Hooker in the area after Stanley Furniture moved to High Point, North Carolina, and American Furniture closed. Bassett now has a number of employees scattered around the U.S. and has leveraged its strong name to have 90 plus company and licensee-owned stores. Hooker is consistently rated by Forbes magazine as one of the top 30 fastest-growing companies in the U.S. From 1947 to the present, Speedway could be counted down as the county's most consistent economic driver, but with the recent NASCAR slump in attendance, even its record is in peril. We're fortunate that the U.S. population prefers short tracks. Perhaps Commonwealth Crossing, the most recent industrial park, will allay all fears and return the area to its former position as an economic leader. It is appropriate then that today we examine the second transformation of the county, the furniture industry. I know of no better spokesperson for the industry than today's speaker. Jeff Bassett is Senior Vice President of Bassett Furniture Industries and the Chief Operations Officer. Jeff, as the Chief Operating Officer of Bassett Industries, spends about half of his time arranging deals and checking on production in foreign countries. I will often ask Diane, who's here today, his spouse, where Jeb is currently traveling. I have only 2 more responsibilities. The first is to introduce Andy Doss, who will show slides of the workers at the Bassett plant, perhaps say a few words about the project, tell the Bassett story in the train station in Bassett, Virginia. Andy is the senior systems programmer at Bassett Furniture and a former senior advisor at Tel Vista and a former systems analyst programmer at Stanley Furniture. He currently is president of the George Waller chapter, the Sons of the American Revolution. I mentioned George Waller a little bit earlier. He holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from Averett and has studied public administration theory at Virginia Tech. My second task is to thank the sponsors of this year's event. They include Bassett Furniture Industries and the Lester Group. And I thank them for the sponsorship and for caring about the future of the history of this area. I know Jeb will have a great deal to say about the early history of the company and the current status of the furniture industry. And he is an excellent historian of this area. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeb Bassett, followed by Andy Doss.